All right, everyone, we are here with our next career visit. Okay, so information and technology executive. So today I want to introduce a special guest, right? He has over 26 years of experience in the technology industry. He has focused on enabling business process and innovation from a senior and executive level vantage point. He has worked in multiple industries, both domestically and globally, to drive increased profit and process efficiency. He received his bachelor's from Florida State University and his MBA from Tulane University. He is the Chief Information Officer at Europe. So I would like to introduce again Mr. Gary Flowers. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hey, I'm Alberto. I am happy to be here. For everyone in the room, I appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to Alberto drill me with all these questions.
Oh yeah, we're ready to go. We're ready to go. So I'll drill him with the first question. All right. So briefly tell me a bit about you, your academic background, and where you are up to where you are today.
Yeah. So team. So I'm currently the CIO of a national equity-based nonprofit called Europe. We focus on closing the opportunity divide. And we educate and place about 5,000 opportunity youth a year. That is my current position. If we want to rewind back to where it all started, I started out at Florida State University, getting a bachelor's in management and information systems. I then spent about 10 years of my career in management consulting in some of the, at the time, Big Four accounting firms and management firms. And then after that, decided my ultimate goal coming out of college was to be a CIO. So I moved over to executive level positions. And this is my fourth CIO position in 17 years. So that's the short version of the journey. Started at Florida State, and now ended up working for a national nonprofit.
Awesome. So I want to ask you, you wanted to be a CIO. What kind of sparked your interest in that position, but also kind of in the information and technology industry?
Well, it's interesting, when I was growing up, at some point I wanted to be a doctor, at some point I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I took, what I did know is I loved solving problems. And my senior year in high school, I took an AP computer science class, which truly was my first true introduction to technology. Passed the class, loved the class. Unfortunately, did not pass the AP exam, but that's a whole nother exam. That's a whole nother story. But that's what really piqued my interest in technology. So did that my senior year. And when I went to college, I initially was actually going to be a computer science major, but decided once I got into college that I was more inclined I love technology, but I was more inclined to talk to people than I was to zeros and ones. So I switched over from computer science to the management information systems department, which was in the business school. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and I know you did minor in computer science though, right?
I did. Yeah. So I majored in MIS, minored in computer science, but the focus was using technology to solve business solutions.
So I know you also mentioned, you mentioned in high school, you took that AP course. Did you take other AP course? What kind of student were you in high school?
Well, it's interesting because dependent on what classification, right? That was the only AP class that I took. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a high GPA, but I had a reasonably high standardized test score. So I had below a 3.0 GPA, but I had above a 1200 SAT score. And so I was a decent student, not a great student, but I test well. and I love technology. So I got through high school, and it really was when I got into my major in college where I really hit my stride, right? You know, it's let's say been great ever since.
Awesome, awesome. So my next question to you is, in order to get to where you wanted to go, right, one day be a CIO, what initiatives did you take to stand out from other applicants? Maybe some internships or things you did in college?
Great question. Great question. So I was one of those students that um, took classes and at one point had 3 jobs. So at my height in college, I was a work study student. I was a RA to work on my quote unquote management skills. And then I had an actual internship in my field for the Department of Transportation. And so I was big into keeping myself busy and learning in college how important networking was to get me to where I wanted to be.
Mhm.
So I was blessed that I was able to network in college that eventually turned into the right contacts as we started to go through, you know, the interviewing process and talking to companies. And the networking piece really allowed me to do something that I like to stress, which is the importance of networking is having people talk about you when you're not in the room. And so early on in college, I had people actually having conversations with recruiters based off of all 3 jobs, basically, right? My work study job, my RA job, and my actual internship. When it came time to go through the interviewing process, I was actually very surprised how many opportunities were actually presented to me. I thought I was a good student. I was a good student. I had a 3.8, 3.9 in my major, um, but still was, you know, and I credit that to really focusing on networking my last 2 years in college.
Definitely networking, always presenting the best version of yourself, because the magic kind of happens. People talking when you're not there, right? Be like, hey, so and so's a great applicant. Um,
Absolutely.
so that is great. So for this internship, can you remember if it was presented to you maybe at the career service location at your university, or did you kind of take it upon yourself to look for it?
No, great question. So the internship, the opportunity, the way that it presented itself to me is I was part of what they call the MIS Society or Association. And part of being a part of that association meant I got to see organizations come in and present about their companies. But more importantly, I got to meet other people in the MIS program that were either um, going along with me or actually could have been a year or so ahead of me. And so, Alberto, what happened was when I was in that program, I had a gentleman that we clicked and, um, one day he said, listen, I am actually graduating and I have an internship and they're looking for someone to replace me. Would you be interested? And when he told me how much they were paying, I said, of course. But also from an experience standpoint, right? It was in my field of study. It was for the Department of Transportation, which was right there in Tallahassee, from a state agency standpoint. And it had a proven track record of giving good recommendations if you did good work. And so that's how I found out about it, right? Doing good work, being recognized in the association, speaking up in the meetings, being recognized, and then clicking with other individuals. And the job, kind of presented itself to me. Now, I did have, to be fair, good contacts in the Career Center.
Mm-hmm.
And my contacts in the Career Center definitely helped me through the interviewing process as I went through when I graduated to get my full-time position. But that is the way that I got my internship opportunity.
I like how you talk about kind of having good contacts and, meeting people, because that's what it comes down to, right? Can you present yourself right? Can you ask questions? Can you be engaged and show people, hey, I'm different from another applicant? And that's what we try to teach our students, even in these Zoom calls, right? Ask your questions, turn your cameras on. This is all great practice for you later on. Thank you for that. So we all know right now you're CIO, but you had to have started somewhere at an entry level position. Can you tell us what that entry level position was and maybe what your day-to-day looked like?
Absolutely. So my first position was a consultant for an organization called Arthur Andersen. You guys probably know them as Andersen Consulting now. I actually worked for the audit side. And so my first position coming out of college was a consultant for a technology management consultant for mid-market companies. So from a day-to-day standpoint, I dealt with organizations that were, anywhere from 50 million to $1 billion in revenue. And I initially came out as a consultant / developer. And so I used my skills that I learned from the business school to understand how to interview my clients, understand their requirements. And then I used my skills from the technology piece to actually be able to be one of the consultants that actually did the development. Way back in the day when we were developing, Visual Basic 4, if anyone actually knows what that is. And so that was my first position. And day to day, I was either defining requirements, or once we got past the requirement stage, actually developing and testing the tools that we did to solve business problems.
Okay. What were the work hours like for that position?
No, absolutely. So, back then it was, I think we would get in between 8 and 9, and we would leave when we got done. So the official ending hours were between 5 and 6. But, back in those days, I was the low man on the totem pole. And so, I probably averaged, on a good week, I was working probably 45 hours. On a challenging week, it was 60 plus, right? But one of those things were, and it's not a popular thing today, but one of those things was kind of put my dues in, right? To your point, Alberto, making sure that I put the time in to differentiate myself. So two things is, one, to differentiate myself from my counterparts, but also to ingratiate myself to my counterparts, to make sure that they realize that if both of us are on the team, they know that Gary's part is going to get completed because he's a hard worker and he's doing his job. And that has served me well. Both have served me well over my career.
Okay, there we go. So hard work. And now I'm going to ask you, in your position now, what do you do day to day?
Man, I believe, I'll tell you what my title says and what actually happens.
Okay.
So my title says that I do strategy for the organization from a technology standpoint, which I do. But also understand that I've only been in this position as of exactly today. I've been in this position for 2 months. And so in the first 2 months of an executive position, you're really focused on understanding the organization. For me, understanding where technology sits, understanding what the roadmap needs to be for the next 12 to 24 months. And so I spend, Alberto, a lot of time in meetings, a lot of time talking to my staff, a lot of time talking to my fellow executives, a lot of time talking and understanding the functional areas, instead of jumping straight into the technology. Mm-hmm. Right? I can understand the technology, but the technology doesn't matter because, the technology doesn't matter alone. When I lead departments, we don't do technology for technology's sake. We use technology to solve business problems. So I'm spending the first couple of months understanding what those issues are, understanding what the strategic views and initiatives are in the organization, and seeing how I can match technology to solve those. Now, I would tell you, my consulting background, I'm not used to having 2 to 3 months to do that. I'm actually used to having a week or two, because as a consultant, they bring you in, you need to understand the business and then start delivering value. And so that currently is my day. It'll ebb and flow as I'm at the organization longer. But what you will hear a lot of times for an executive is, what is that, no different than the president, right? He has a first 100-day plan. Executives have the first thing, the same thing. I have a plan on what I need to do and what I need to accomplish in that first 100 days. And I'm 60 days into that 100 days right now.
Okay. So yeah, first 2 months, kind of getting to know, identify the problems, issues, and then seeing what you can do or how you can incorporate technology to solve those problems.
Right. And in one piece, just to be clear, identifying the gap. So I do have to spend a considerable amount of time understanding the staff and where technology is now, so that I can match that up to where we are and identify those gaps. So it's both sides.
Okay. All right. So my next question is, you've been in the industry for quite a while now, right? You're very experienced. So when you are interviewing people, or when you have interviewed people, what skills, abilities, and personal attributes are essential, for you to see in a person?
Yeah, I would tell you, it doesn't matter what position on any staff that I have. A critical thinker is something that I value above anything else. Someone that is going to take a look and, as I always like to say, ask the next question, right? So not just the obvious question in front of you, but digging a little deeper to make sure, because you don't want necessarily to solve what someone's asking you. You want to solve what the actual core issue is. And a lot of times, someone may present you with a problem, and if you ask a couple of levels deeper, then you'll actually get to what the issue is, and you'll solve for things they didn't even know they were asking you. And so that critical thinking piece, right? No matter whether you're a developer, a project manager, a database person, a QA person, the skill set is one thing. You can get certifications to do that. You can read things in books to do that. But to be a critical thinker would go a long way in your career, no matter what discipline and technology you decide to go down.
Awesome. So being a critical thinker, always just kind of trying to be ahead of step of the game and really try to identify the core issue or the problem. I like that. So what would you advise to someone who would like to be in the same position you are in someday?
Have a plan. So I would tell you, I knew coming out of college that I wanted to be a CIO. My goal was to become a CIO within 15 years after coming out of college. So for most of the individuals on here, I'm a couple of years older than you. So 15 years back in those days was reasonable. What I would tell you is, I planned my career 5 years at a time. I said, in order for me to get to the CIO goal, in the next 3 to 5 years, what do I need to do? And I started to check those things off. And because I had that plan, and I was very intentful in what I was doing, it actually took me 6 years. So setting goals, executing against those goals, taking advantage of opportunities, and focusing on delivering quality work. The one thing that you can control is what you do at an organization. You may not be able to control the politics. You may not be able to control how quickly you rise up in an organization. But what you can control is how you execute on a project. And whether it's the organization that you're at now, or whether it's another organization that's going to recognize that, people, the old phrase, the cream of the crop rises to the top, right? That is incredibly true when it comes to any career, but especially from a technology standpoint, where the technology will change. The one constant, consistent thing in technology is change. So becoming an expert in a particular technology is a great thing. But there is a runway associated with that, because there will be a different version of that technology. There may be a different technology that comes out that does it better than the technology that you know. But being a continuous lifelong learner, one, and then making sure that wherever you are, you're executing against that plan, gets you to your ultimate goal. And then what I would tell you is, once you reach that goal, unless you're one of the founders of WhatsApp and they sold off to, Facebook, and you'd really never have to work again. Once you reach that goal, you reset to another goal. I would tell you, when I became a CIO at 6 years out of school, I was there for a year and I reset my goal because I didn't think I was well-rounded enough. When I became a CIO again, I was a domestic CIO. And then I decided, hey, this is great. I want to be a global CIO. When I became a global CIO and I worked for private equity, I then said, now I want to focus on giving back. And then I switched over to equity-based nonprofits. Right. And so my goal and what I had always changed, but I was always present in my current position, and then my current position, the best of my abilities, and always knew that someone would recognize that to help me get to what the next goal would be. And I'll stop there, Roberto.
I love it. I love it. So you talk about creating those goals personally. What does that look like for you? Do you write them down, or do you just keep them in your head? How do you go about that?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of key components to that, Alberto. I'll speak on that, and then it's to me a natural transition to something else, which is, whether it's writing things down, whether it's in our digital age, typing it into something, documenting what you want is something, because everyone loves to accomplish things. And it's one thing to be able to accomplish something, and it's another thing to be able to accomplish something and cross it out, right? Whether that be in with a pencil, or whether that be digitally, having those goals and being able to check those off or cross those out gives you a sense of accomplishment and encourages you to now focus on the next goal. The other thing I would tell you is mentorship is huge. So not just networking, but I am very, very cognizant of never being the smartest person in the room or never being the person that's the most accomplished that I know, because I want to surround myself with people that can pour into me and teach me. Now, on the flip side, I also take the responsibility very seriously to then pour into others. But having that mentor, so I, for instance, have accomplished a lot from my career. But I personally know CIOs that just make me say, wow, I want to be like them when I grow up. And so I talk to them, or I talk to people that have owned businesses, that have run, companies much larger, to help me understand what I need to do to get to the next level, right? Because, a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. So the more you surround yourself with people that have been there, done that, and position yourself to where they will pour into you, the better off you'll be. And I'll, again, just echo the fact that when you do that, you have a responsibility to pay it forward.
Definitely. So
Right?
definitely seeking mentorship. And I could say, people sometimes may be shy or be like, I don't know if they'll want to actually, take me under their wing or show me. But a lot of the time, most people are, glad to provide that mentorship for others, right? So my last question to you is going to be, you've mentioned that, you weren't always the smartest, you weren't, things of that sort. So was there a time where you got told no or a door closed on you where you were like, oh man, maybe down on it, but how did you react to that or how did you bounce back?
Yeah, I will tell you, they've been multiple times, Alberto. I've been doing this for 26 years. If I sat here and tell you it was a perfect hockey stick from the time that I graduated college, I would literally be lying to you, right? It's more like the stock market ticker, right? There are ups and downs, and then there's bear markets. And so I would tell you there's a couple of times, and one I alluded to earlier. Early in my career, um, I got to be a CIO much sooner than I thought I ever would, and made more money than I ever thought I would. And I thought that was it. Like this is it. Like this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my career, you know. And got a rude awakening, right? Because I thought since I had gotten that position that I knew it all. Um, I was young. I was a hard worker. Someone recognized my hard work. I have the title. Now, let's just enjoy. And quite frankly, again, I got a rude awakening. And it was because I didn't learn the lesson early on that I had just talked to you about, which is resetting my goals.
Mhm.
Once I had gotten there, I became complacent on where I was. And it only took 1 year for the world to make me realize that complacency is not something that I have the luxury of having. And so I took a step back, right? I went from being a divisional CIO for $1 billion organization to going back into consulting. And I went back into consulting for another 4 years before I got another opportunity to be a CIO again. Now, when I got that opportunity, I was like, yeah, this will not be a repeat of last time. And it has been, a pretty good ride since. But that was a case where, I really had a wake up call, if you would, which would still be, 5, 6 years into your career, still pretty early on into your career.
Mhm.
Um, and didn't repeat that in the future.
I like that. Yeah. Maybe that setback, you didn't allow that to define you really, right? And be like, oh, this
Right.
is it. You kept going. And once you got that shot, next time you were like, you know what, I'm ready
Yeah.
to go. I'm not gonna make that mistake.
Yeah. It's okay to be down for a little bit,
Mhm.
is what I would tell you. So when I went through that, I, kind of doubted myself for a little bit. But again, back to what I was speaking, I was blessed enough to have people in my life that said, listen, I know it's disappointing. Take a break, take a pause, but didn't let me sit there, right? Realize that, hey, this is, this is, this is not how your career is going to be defined. But it is something that you need to take a pause so you make sure you learn from it and don't repeat it in the future, right? And still push me. And so that's why I think, you know, this group, you guys are in the community college. This is the time to start having these conversations, start thinking about networking, mentorship, what your goals are. This is the time to start those habits. Because I would tell you the habits that I formed my first 5 years of my career are still things that I do here 26 years later. Like still fundamental things that I do now. I've built upon them, but the building blocks were there from college, from early in my career. So, and I'll stop there about it.
Those are some That's great advice and some powerful words. So thank you. All right, students, I'm gonna